Welcome YouTube, my name is Villains and this is a video months in the making. This is the Suicide Boys iceberg, and I'm not going to tell y'all what an iceberg is because I'm quite sure y'all already know at this point. Months ago I came upon it randomly, and at the time, as you guys can see, the page had less than 7,000 views, and so I knew this was something that I had to make. A couple shoutouts before we get into it though. Obviously, thank you to the person who created it and those who updated it. Huge shoutouts to the G59 and Suicide Boys subreddit. This video literally is impossible without y'all. In the past couple months, the boys have been blowing up on this channel, yet I still feel like people in the community don't know about our channel yet. So with this video, I hope to make the biggest contribution to the community that I can, and the biggest video of my entire channel up until this point. So grab a snack, sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy this video. Before we get into the first entry, I just want to mention the instant classic Nardwar interview, which as of recording this happened yesterday. It's 30 minutes long, got mad funny moments in it. Go check it out if you haven't already. And yeah, just thought I should mention it before we begin. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of this video. Let's get into the first layer of the iceberg. Viral songs on TikTok. The song "And to Those I Love, Thanks for Sticking Around" was a part of the Stop Staring at the Shadows album, which dropped on Valentine's Day in 2020. There's a lot of extremely cringe TikToks using this song, but on the other hand, it was a huge catapult for their career. So at the end of the day, it did pay off, but I understand a lot of the OG fans being upset. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge that it did play a big part in the boost of popularity that the boys got, and because of that, they're more successful now than ever before. Scream has talked about this a few times also during concerts and songs, basically thanking the TikTok crowd. I'm not sure what other songs had them trending, but this is pretty much the most known one, and it also covers its own entry on the iceberg. Eat your vegetables. Continued from the last entry, the vegan teacher is this annoying and obnoxious lady on YouTube who claims she's fighting to save animals and the planet. She mainly reacts to videos amongst other things, and people basically roasted her for her takes and the way she was coming at everybody crazy. And eating vegetables isn't really a crazy take, it's just the way that she said it perfectly transitioned into Ruby's singing part in the song, and it's pretty funny, I can't lie. New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans is a city in the state of Louisiana, and it's where the boys are from. Scrim specifically grew up in Marrero, and Ruby in the mid-Aries, which is close to Fat City, and he's referenced this a few times. Honestly, a lot of their songs contain references that'll go over heads just because of how much they include references to New Orleans and Louisiana in their songs. And speaking of which, Interstate 59. Interstate 59 is a highway in Louisiana that goes northeast up to Georgia. It begins in the corner of Slidell, which is a city in St. Tammany Parish, a location that's also referenced quite a few times in their songs. In the famous No Jumper interview, which we'll be talking about later, the boys basically explain how this number inspired the G59 movement, gray being the color you get when you mix black and white, and Interstate 59 being the line that divided the communities, and G59 essentially being birthed from that, but more on that later. The 7th Ward. As explained by this comment in the G59 subreddit, the 7th is a part of New Orleans, which of course Ruby, the 7th Ward Lord, claims his title from. Louisiana hurricanes. So it's no secret to anyone down south in the US that hurricanes are an essential part of the history of many of those states. Some of the most deadly hurricanes ever have occurred down south, and Louisiana especially has had to suffer through quite a few of them. Rest in peace to all those that were lost. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any comments Ruby or Scrim made on any of the hurricanes. And with that, let's go on to the next layer of the iceberg. Ruby the Cherry and Scrim. These are the most commonly used aliases to refer to the Suicide Boys, Ruby and Scrim. What else is there to say? Kill Yourself 3, Paris, Secondhand, For the Last Time, Southside Suicide. So I'll lump all these songs together because there's a very high likelihood that it was one of these songs that exposed many of us to the boys for the first time. For me personally, it was Paris. These all dropped in 2015, 2015, 2017, 2017, and 2015 in that order. All 5 of these songs are also included in their top 10 most streamed songs ever. With that, let's go on to the next layer of the iceberg. 666 Mafia lawsuits. No Jumper has a solid video on this topic, but to summarize, 3-6 are a huge influence on the boys, and that's no secret if you listen to the music. From production to delivery, the boys are clearly inspired by the Memphis scene in their prime, especially 3-6 Mafia, which will go more into their relationship with Juicy J later on. So imagine the surprise when 3-6 filed a $6.5 million lawsuit on the illegal sampling and stealing of 35 different songs. This isn't the only time the boys have been in trouble with a similar lawsuit, more on that in just a second. In the end, the lawsuit resulted in a settlement by both parties outside of court. Dead Mouse Scandal. The The intro of the song Antarctica clearly samples a section of deadmau5's I Remember, and this resulted in him filing a copyright claim over the song on YouTube. The song was taken down for quite some time until it was settled over Twitter, I guess. deadmau5 told Scrim that he could have just asked to sample it, which, I mean, something tells me deadmau5 wouldn't have responded if Scrim did ask, but whatever. deadmau5 is apparently infamous for his many copyright lawsuits, but there's a bit more to this whole issue, which we'll get into later. The boys are cousins. That's about it. Ruby and Scrim are actual cousins. They pretty much say it all the time. Travis Barker collab. Live Fast and Die Whenever is the project that these guys put out back in 2019, and it's pretty solid. Go check it out if you haven't. There's a couple more to this, which we'll be going into later. You did good, Slick. This is one of the couple producer tags you'll hear in many of the boys' tracks, basically letting y'all know that Scrim himself produces one. It also debuted in his solo album, which we'll talk about, as well as the other tags later on in this video. Antarctica re-release. On September 3rd, 2021, the track was re-released with deadmau5 in the credits. It took a couple of years before the song was back up on streaming and YouTube to listen to. Spitting in fans' mouths. Yeah, so there's a couple videos of Scrim just lobbing gobs of spit out into the crowd during concerts, and people, females if I had to guess, are waiting like mouth wide open like the Get Your Freak On music video just to catch his spit. I like to think he ain't doing this after the Rona, but it's a different vibe at these concerts, man. I'm telling y'all. No Jumper interview. I recommend to all those who haven't seen this that after this video, you go straight to No Jumper's channel to watch this. Just an amazing interview, especially for those just getting into the boys. This was also apparently where the boys met a few of their future collaborators, which we'll be talking about very soon, along with the stuff that they talked about during this interview. Before they were famous. Pretty sure y'all know who Michael McCrudden is. He is the voice and face of the Before They Were Famous YouTube channel. Essentially, the Before They Were Famous videos are small biographies on anybody who was famous, from musicians to athletes to influencers. And so of course, he had a video on the boys, as well as later on a second video basically updating the information from the first one. Reaction channels. So there's way too many of these to name, but I'll go ahead and list some of my favorites, from Mr. 2K God, Taunt, I'm Veli, the Psychotherapist guy, that one guy who smokes a lot, the JK Bros, Beers and Bars. Reaction channels exist in just about every community, and for the boys, it's no different. It's probably how you found my channel, and I thank you for that. And I ain't gonna lie, not to flex, but the villains got some of the best reactions on YouTube. But with that being said, I'll pass it off to my friend who's also a huge fan of the boys, GHOSTTYPE. I'll be back after him for some more entries, but take it away, gang.
Yo, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited. I'm a huge Suicide Boys fan, so I'm gonna get right into this. I hung myself for a persona. Now I'm up to my neck in offers. This is most likely referring to the music video where they took 2 tracks off of their EP and made one music video for it, shot in separate locations, but they also cut Scrim's verse from I Hung Myself for a Persona and Ruby's verse for Now I'm Up to My Neck in Offers. If you've only heard the music video version of these songs, go check out the originals, because Ruby's verse and Now I'm Up to My Neck in Offers is his best verse of all time, and I will die on that hill. The Genius interviews. They've done 3 of these interviews, one for Paris, Carrollton, and Opana. Genius is a website that posts lyrics to music, and they'll do interviews with the artists where they read through their lyrics and break them down a little bit more. Scrim is absolutely tweaked in most of them, and we'll talk about some of their quotes here soon. G59, Gray 59, G59 Records. This is the name of the record label that was established in 2013. We're also going to be talking about the affiliated G59 members. Next up, Antarctica. If you're a new fan and you haven't heard Antarctica yet, go check it out. It's one of their greats. It's one of their classics. And we already talked about earlier how deadmau5 had sued them for sampling. Citing the Yiddies. Now, I don't know if there are video evidence of this or pictures, whatever, but the boys are savages, right? So I'm not sure if this is referencing anything other than just them doing that, but come on. Of course they're out here doing that. Scrim's perm. Around early 2020, Scrim shaved his head and he got rid of his dreadlocks. This was the first steps to his sobriety, which we will cover a little bit later. As his hair grew out, he ended up getting a perm, and come on, man, I like the way he looks. Though the dreadlocks are a very recognizable and signature look for Scrim, Scrim's perm shows the progress that he's made in bettering himself and changing who he was into who he is now. Ruby and Scrim's real name. Now, I've definitely looked up their names before, but I have forgotten them. They're not the most common of names. Scrim's name is Scott Anthony Arsenault Jr. Trust me, I had to Google how to pronounce that last name. Ruby's name is Aristo Norman Petra, which also segues into Ruby being half Greek, which comes from his father, but we'll talk more about that later. And finally, for this layer, Scrim's robot dance. Essentially, Scrim does a robot dance, and it kind of got memed on. You can find some edits of it, but that's essentially it. Moving on to the next layer, this is the average fan layer. Ruby crying during concerts. Now this happens fairly often. If I remember right, he did it during the concert that I attended to as well. During performances like Antarctica, you can actually see Ruby start to tear up because you can tell that this music is his life and soul, and the things that these guys sing about and rap about, it's very personal and they share a lot. And they always talk about how if you feel lost, if you feel alone, just know that they're going through it too. They have built a fan base that's pretty much a family. A lot of the times these shows can get pretty emotional. Lil Peep tributes and tributes to other artists. Almost every artist in this scene has tributed Lil Peep or at least acknowledged the impact that he had on the scene as an artist. Lil Peep is also one of my favorite artists of all time, and it's unfortunate that we lost him as soon as we did. They have also paid tribute to other artists who have passed away, artists that I never even knew of, and bigger artists such as Mac Miller. New style music videos. The original Suicide Boys music videos had a very distinct look to them. They'd use tons of filters, invert colors, random B-roll, and subtitles that would pop up on the screen. As they got bigger and more professional and actually had a budget for music videos, you can tell that they have gotten more cinematic and more explicit, showing off drugs and different locations that they'd be filming in. There was also a time in which they stopped putting up videos completely for a few years. They then started uploading these lyric videos created by Junkie Archives. The lyric videos would consist of the lyrics, of course, with background footage that would just be darker material that would fit the vibe. And most recently, they started uploading animated videos, which have been very interesting and very cool, created by Tristan Zamet. Numerous stage names. There are an insane amount of stage names that these guys use, and each one is almost like a different persona. Some of the more common ones that you'll hear for Scrim are Lil Cutthroat, Young Christ, Northside Shorty, Wedo, Young Scarecrow, Slick, and as for Ruby, Odd Enough, Young Plague, Seventh Warlord, Young Snow, Spooky to Scary, Blanco, Snow Leopard, and others. Somebody on Reddit made a post of every single one of them and every song that they appeared in. Performance starts a riot in LA. So this happened in August of 2017, where the brands FTP and Fucked had a pop-up shop where they would sell clothing, and the boys came to perform, which resulted in a riot. Now supposedly some guy's grandma nearly got trampled, but everything is fine and she's okay, so shouts out to them. Lil Wayne mixtape. Scrim mentioned in a number of interviews that Lil Wayne was one of his biggest inspirations. Lil Wayne obviously needs no introduction. He's an absolute legend. There has been speculation that the three of these guys have hopped on a song together. As of now, that hasn't happened yet, and we'll see if it ever does happen. But there is a video of Lil Wayne bringing the boys out during a concert in 2017. The Suicide Pact. To be honest, this is probably the first thing that most people learn about the Suicide Boys. Essentially, the deal is if they don't make it in the industry by the time they reach 30, they are going to unalive themselves. They've talked about it multiple times about how they were going absolutely nowhere and they were just so depressed that things weren't working out for them. So they made a blood pact and they gave it their all. Now look at them. Why .info. I don't know why I did that. A few years ago, Ruby had a link in his Instagram bio, which was this entry. Someone on Reddit made a post about it, showing how the link would update and change every few minutes to an hour. The links would lead to absolutely nothing having to do with the boys, and instead lead to random images and videos. The site has been up since at least 2008, according to OP, and as of today, it still works, but it is gone from Ruby's bio. If I had to guess, Ruby was just trying to meme on people. How the Suicide Boys became the multi-million-dollar brand you've never heard of. This refers to an article by Billboard in October of 2021, where they asked them about their latest album at the time, Long-Term Effects of Suffering, and Ruby's rehab on the night of October 26, 2020. Scrim's dreads, we talked about this a little bit earlier. This is Scrim's signature look for a long time. When the Suicide Boys were blowing up, this is the look that Scrim had. It's probably the most recognizable one. Ruby's poses. Ruby's got a ton of poses, from the 3 fingers up, the spread eagle, to the take a sip, to the head down, to the let me grab my hat, the peekaboo, middle finger up, sometimes combining them with the pants down pose. You get it. This guy's got a lot of poses. Label signees. These are the members of the G59 crew. You might not know them, you might know them very well. Here they are, starting with Ramirez, Germ, Night Lavelle, Shakewell, but we're actually going to talk more about them later. Scrim's tattoos. He's got a lot of tattoos, and we'll just point out some of the more prominent ones, starting with his eyelid tattoos that say Dirt Nap, Love Till Death, which he has across his back, Northside Shorty on his stomach, Fear God on his chest, and obviously his face tattoos. Do Not Resuscitate on the forehead, the screw on his temple, the teardrops, the upside down cross that he had on his forehead, which later got adjusted to a trident. Producing beats for Juicy J. In 2017, Juicy J put out an album called Highly Intoxicated, produced mainly by the Suicide Boys. They also were featured on a song called Freaky, which was also their first time having a song featured in a film. Still weird how the things turned out with Juicy J, even with them being in the Chokehold music video off of his mixtape Shut the Fuck Up, which they produced. And now I'm gonna throw it back to the boy villains.
Denying interviews. I couldn't find any instances where they outright denied anyone for an interview, but I'm sure it happens all the time. The boys are extremely popular artists, and they don't have many interviews to begin with, so it ain't far-fetched to believe that they turn people down all the time. How to Roll a Backwoods with the boys. The How to Roll a Backwoods series is done on the Hot New Hip Hop channel, and they've done it with other artists as well, and the boys had a great episode back in 2018. Mass Appeal interview. Keeping the interviews going, we got the Mass Appeal interview done in 2017 on an episode of Open Space. Another great video to add to your watch list after this. Dennis McNerney vlog. If you know me, you know I love. In 2018, this small YouTuber named Dennis McNerney uploaded this video. He apparently doesn't have IG or Twitter anymore, which sucks, but he basically got to talk to Ruby, Germ, and Crystal Meth, who hooked him up during one of their concerts in Dallas. The vibes in this video is mad chill throughout. It's a really great video. Go check it out later. Appearances on XXL. The boys have appeared in the XXL YouTube channel one time for their own video in a segment type thing called Real Friends. Basically, they answer questions based off each other to test their friendship. Other than that, XXL published 2 articles on them where they basically asked them a couple regular questions back in 2017. The Shed. This refers to the small shed in the back of what I believe was Scrim's home years ago that many of the beats we know and love were produced in. There's also a funny video that was taken in there, but we'll be talking about that later. This shed was referenced in the song pretty recently, definitely a legendary spot in the history of the Suicide Boys. Suicide Freestyle. So this refers to a live they did on Instagram back in 2019 where Ruby was basically freestyling on a beat. The same freestyle would later be a part of Ruby's verse on the song Ugliest, as well as the freestyle itself sampling part of Ruby's verse from Audubon. There's way more examples of the boys sampling themselves, which we'll be getting into later. LTE Gloss of Blood. A classic video from back in 2015 that, again, similar to Hung Myself for a Persona and Up to My Neck with Offers, it was 2 separate songs cut in between Ruby and Scrim's verses. This video has probably my favorite ending to any Suicide Boys video ever. Yo, Ruby throwing himself just gets me every time. I just don't know why. All my life I've wanted a Chevy. I ended up driving the Camaro off the Causeway Bridge. Speaking of classic Suicide Boys videos, you cannot go too long without bringing this one up. Arguably their most iconic video, and the song and video constantly gets referenced to this day and is fire every single time. This video came out back in 2015 and was uploaded 4 days after LTE and Gloss of Blood. Strange ad-libs. So there's a lot of these. After a while listening to the boys' music, you'll hear that one ad-lib that comes out of absolutely nowhere, like Quack in the song Avalon, probably one of the more out there ones. Ruby also vomits as an ad-lib, I guess, in a lot of the songs. They also yell out their names a lot, which I guess could be considered strange, but after a while, you just kind of get used to it, and instead of the ad-libs sounding weird, they kind of start to sound fire. And nowadays, I mean, who doesn't have a strange ad-lib? So you know what? Never change, guys. Scrim's deleted Snapchat. So Scrim definitely had a Snapchat that he seemed to use frequently along with Ruby as well. Back in 2015 or 16 seems to be when they were most active, even having some fans added as friends. I'm not sure what It's Your Boy Big Juice is, but I kind of saw that everywhere. I'm not sure when he deleted his Snapchat, but it seems it happened around late 2016, early 2017. G59 affiliations. Starting with Ramirez, it seems like they linked up pretty early on in 2016. In this interview, Ramirez talks about putting out a tweet asking for a sample, and shortly after, Scrim hit him up, and basically the rest is history. They got tons of great tracks together, and Ramirez as an artist has grown so much since. Foul Play is a clothing brand run by Adam Arriaga, who is the creative director for G59. You'll often see the boys wearing lots of Foul Play clothes, even in the somewhat earlier days. Jay Cheddar is a friend of the boys, especially Scrim. He's a rapper as well, with some tracks that Scrim produced and is featured on. There's a lot more to Jay Cheddar that we'll be getting into later because there was a beef for a time between them. That's all resolved now, though, it seems. Night Lowell and the boys crossed paths naturally through interest in each other's music and basically became friends afterwards. They put out a really good track back in 2018 called Joan of Arc, and in 2021, Night Lowell officially signed to G59. Shakewell signed to G59 in 2020, and I couldn't find any details on how they first met, but I'm assuming it was through Puya, who they met around the time they did the No Jumper interview. Before this year, the boys and Shakewell only had 2 songs together, the first being Venom, which dropped back in 2017, and Solutions, which was off Shakewell's album last year in 2022. Germ signed on to G59 in 2018, and I'm pretty sure their first time meeting was during the No Jumper interview, where you can see Germ popping in and out of the video. And in my opinion, whenever these 3 guys collab, they literally never miss. It's wild. Their first time collabing was on Uzi Loogies back in 2016 for their first tape, Dirty Nasty Suicide, which is the first of a trilogy of tapes. Zach FTP is synonymous with the boys because of those 3 letters. In 2015, they had put out the song The Population. Obviously, the boys do not own FTP, they are just affiliated. INLF TRG MH series. I No Longer Fear the Razor Guarding My Heel 1, 2, 3, and 4 are a series of EPs similar to that of the Kill Yourself sagas, each containing 3 songs. The first released midway through 2015, the second released in late 2015, the third released in late 2016, and the fourth in 2018, which was a part of their debut album, I Want to Die in New Orleans. Most of these tracks are heavy on the depressive undertones and meanings. Very much worth a listen to all 4 of these if you haven't already. Scrim's exes. Scrim has taken a lot of pics with a lot of girls, but if I'm being honest, I really don't care that much to do personal research on a dude, so like this comment on the Reddit says, I'ma mind my business, and you should too. Kill Yourself 4 only on SoundCloud. So I'm assuming because of the sample, the song was only on SoundCloud for a time, and then by the time it got to Spotify, it was under a different name, and actually just recently it was put back up on streaming services, as well as a lyric video for it being posted about 4 minutes ago as of recording this. We'll be talking about it more later on in the Iceberg. Stop calling us horrorcore. In a lot of articles and pages, you'll see people refer to the boys as shadow rap or goth rap, and in 2016, they made a song titled Stop Calling Us Horrorcore, basically responding to all of that. I was just with Peep in London. This is a line in the song I Hung Myself for a Persona that was, of course, real. In 2017, the boys would bring Peep out during a concert, and I'm sure they chilled together during their free time in London as well, and as we all know, later on in that year, Peep would pass away. Rest in peace, Gus. Ruby and Scrim split. Back in 2018, shortly after September 7th, which was the release of I Want to Die in New Orleans, Ruby had put out a tweet asking for positive vibes for Scrim, and Scrim had changed his bio apparently to say Suicide Boy. It was said that Ruby was going through some personal issues at the time, and Scrim had asked for space and for time so that they can work things out. Obviously, it all worked out in the end. And with that, let me pass it over to the boy GHOSTTYPE so he can continue the iceberg for y'all.
Before the Yin Yang Tapes summer season, the boys collabed with Ghostmane on one song, that being Seppuku, which dropped back in 2015. There may or may not have been beef between them. We'll possibly go into that later. Trill Funk Uploads. Trill Funk is a YouTube channel with over 400,000 subs that hosted tons of underground artists starting all the way back in 2012. People like Denzel Curry, Space Ghost Perp, Chris Travis, Bones, and tons of other artists. Their first Suicide Boys upload was in 2014, a song off the Kill Yourself Part 3 Bud Dwyer saga called Slow Motion Potion. They continued uploading songs from the boys throughout the years, and as of right now, the channel seems to be inactive, last upload being 7 months ago. Bones collabs, and Bones on Fuck the Industry. Bones and the boys have collabed on one song so far, that being Maple Syrup, which was part of their very first Kill Yourself saga released in 2014. Bones is featured at the very end of the song Fuck the Industry, the second to last song on I Want to Die in New Orleans. He gives a eulogy as a person named Ricky Keckney that seems to clear a beef that they had, but we'll go into that later. Scrim and Ruby Sobriety. We mentioned this briefly earlier, but Scrim has said that he's been sober since February 19th of 2019, and Ruby as of October 28th of 2021. The battle that these guys have had with addiction is very well documented. They talk about it in plenty of interviews, and this combined with the suicide pact that they had is just a huge step in the right direction for these guys. So it's very inspiring to see how strong these guys are being and see how much that they are growing as people. Ruby's rat tail. During 2019, these guys had a temporary fallout where they basically split, but it didn't last long because later they put out a tweet saying, hey guys, we're cool now, and Ruby had the top of his hair dyed pink with what seems to be a Padawan rat tail. G59 crew gets COVID-19. This happened back in the summer of 2021. The pandemic wasn't as strong during this period, but it was still affecting many, and unfortunately it got to the G59 crew, resulting in them having to cancel a show. Ruby's dad. We briefly mentioned this earlier. Ruby's father is Greek, and he was a former football coach that came to the US on an athletic scholarship. But what we didn't mention earlier was that he actually owns a restaurant in New Orleans called the Russell's Marina Grill. Ruby actually worked there for a time, and the menu currently has a dish named the Ruby Special. So if you're in the area, go support them. Calm Truth Samples. Calm Truth is an artist that makes EDM music that the boys have sampled a couple of times, like in the songs I Will Celebrate for Stepping on Broken Glass and Slipping on Stomach-Soaked Floors, and also Mannequins Are My Best Friends. Along with Calm Truth samples, the boys sampled the Cash Me Outside Girl back in 2017 and Treat 'Em Like a Prostitute. Hashtag Walk Your Dog Challenge. This refers to a video posted on Instagram in 2020 where Scrim was dancing to All Dogs Go to Heaven, and the caption has the hashtag Walk Your Dog Challenge. Other people joined in on the fun as well, but unfortunately it didn't last very long. Masked Gorilla Interview. The boys did a short interview with the Masked Gorilla channel back in 2016 where they talked about their struggles and come up. As a bonus, Max Beck, the videographer and photographer for the boys, also did an interview on Masked Gorilla in 2018 where he talks about meeting the boys for the first time and his experiences working with them. So make sure you go check those videos out. But hold on, because we're moving on to Ruby's leopard print. Ruby often associates himself with leopards, odd enough to Snow Leopard, Blanco Leopardo, so it's no surprise that he wore leopard print pants. Yeah, I mean, more power to him, right? April Diamonds. The birthstone for the month of April is a diamond, and coincidentally, the boys' birthdays are a little over 1 year apart, with Scrim's being April 11th, 1989, and Ruby's being the 22nd of 1990. Ruby's solo works. Pluto released in March of 2014, and it was an 11-track album that featured Scrim, Sadistic, and what we can call the very first 2 songs by the named Suicide Boys. It was released under the Odd Enough alias. He is also releasing another solo album, which has been highly anticipated ever since Scrim's solo album, but we're going to talk about that later. Let's go back to 2020. Zach from FTP had posted something on his story where you can hear Ruby absolutely going off in the background. For a bit, people thought it was a snippet of his solo project, but it was actually the song New Profile Pic, which is a part of the Long-Term Effects of Suffering album. Ruby also pulled an April Fool's joke saying that he was putting out his own album, but obviously that didn't happen. Until recently. Collabs starting with Puya, Black Smurf, Denzel Curry, and Jay Green. Starting with Puya, they released a 4-track EP back in 2015 called Southside Suicide with videos to accompany them. I'm not sure about their relationship nowadays, but they were definitely tight back then. They first collabed with Black Smurf on a few of their first EPs in 2015, Black Suicide Side B, Suicide Hustle, and finally Black Suicide Side C, The Seventh Seal. This would be the last time that they collabed in 2015, and in terms of the future, we probably won't see anything anytime soon. Jay Green collabed with the boys on Vices and Seppuku, both in 2015. Denzel Curry unfortunately only has one song with the boys, which was Ultimate Suicide back in 2016. Denzel actually shouted out Scrim in a song he was featured in called Please Forgive. I personally hope that these guys work together more in the future though. Cheddar Beef. Apparently this started in 2018 when Scrim texted Cheddah's ex. Those texts were then leaked to Cheddar, obviously creating a fallout between them. There's also a tweet from Cheddar years ago basically saying he doesn't listen to artists that don't care for or support him. Cheddar had also dissed the boys on his own track, but most recently it seems everything is alright. Scrim sold furniture. It's easy to forget that at some point these were just regular dudes, and I mean they still are, but they used to work regular jobs. This refers to the fact that Scrim used to sell furniture until apparently he was fired after 3 years for his new hand tattoos. Figure me a dead motherfucker. Ruby starts off each of the 4 Kill Yourself songs with this iconic line. Isn't it so convincing? This line was first said in Kill Yourself Part 2 by Scrim to start off his verse, and in a different twist on Ruby's line, this line didn't return until the 4th Kill Yourself song. Drillery, I'm not sure what this refers to. Maybe it refers to the drill remixes on YouTube. If you know anything about this, leave a comment below. Trap site uploads. Trap sites are sites that take songs and re-upload them without permission, and of course they've taken Suicide Boys songs, which is pretty scummy. Don't do that. Fear and Self-Loathing in New Orleans. This was the original name for their debut that was changed to I Wanna Die in New Orleans. Ruby posted something on Twitter that explained why the change was made. It was also their bio on their YouTube channel at some point. But with that, I'm gonna throw it back to Villains. Thank you so much, dude, for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Grey Day. This is the name of the tour the boys have done around the United States that was first named in 2019. The 2020 Grey Day was postponed because of the pandemic, however. Their 2023 tour starts on August 25th, and the Villains are actually attending our first Grey Day in September. Can't wait. Live at Wuha. Wuha is a hip-hop festival in the Netherlands that's been going on since 2014. And there was a video of the boys' performance in 2017 that currently has over 9 million views on YouTube. This video is hype as hell, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. There's also a really small channel who uploaded a video of their 2019 performance with barely any views, so go ahead and go run that up after this video. Rolling Loud performances. The boys first performed at Rolling Loud in 2018 and have performed there ever since, of course with the exception of 2020, and as you'd expect, there's great videos of each of these performances. Valan's Vlog, I don't know how to pronounce this, Bullin' with the Boys. This is an extremely well put together video, editing and production wise by the Valan's channel, I don't know how to pronounce that, which they specialize in the sort of cinematic type video, and on top of it being a semi-Suicide Boys interview / day in the life, if nothing else, please watch this video for the production value. Just a simply well done video with big rewatchability factor, great moments, little cameos, everything you'd want in a video. Produced by Bud Dwyer. Pull the trigger, Bud Dwyer. Another producer tag you'll hear in a few songs to let you know it was produced by Scrim. I'm not going to explain who Bud Dwyer is, but if this picture doesn't tell you enough, then you can go ahead and go research that yourself. I ain't trying to get this video blocked. Grey Day 2021 collabs and the Grey Day 2021 playlist. The collabs for 2021's Grey Day included Shakewell, Night Lovell, Germ, Ramirez, Puya, and many others. You can look up a playlist of all the songs that were performed at the 2021 Grey Day, but if you notice, many of these playlists include Chief Keef, which leads into the next entry of the Iceberg. Chief Keef backs out of Grey Day Tour 2021. As far as I can tell, it's all speculation, but people say Sosa backed out of the tour because of ego. I also seen some people say he got sick, but nothing is concrete from my research, so unfortunate that people were hyped to see him at the time and didn't get to see him, but it is what it is. Grey Grey. Grey Grey was the first full-length project released by the boys on March 3rd, 2015, and it's got a number of classics on there. Genius page / verified lyrics. Just like tons of other artists, the boys have a verified page on Genius with verified explanations of lyrics that are pretty much taken out of the couple of interviews that they've done with them. They've also co-signed or approved of some of the breakdowns of their lyrics. BNS3. So y'all gotta remember that this Iceberg was created, it seems a little bit before 2022 and hasn't been updated in some time. The Dirty Nasty Suicide series is 3 mixtapes by Germ and the boys, and the third dropped in December of 2022. But the gap between Dirtier and Nastier Suicide, which was the second of the 3 tapes, was 5 whole years. So there were tons of speculation and rumors about it ever being released, which explains its place on this Iceberg. And for extra context, the first tape was released back in 2016. So basically the release order went 2016, 17, all the way to 22. Anthony Fantano sample. Everyone's favorite music nerd, Rube Anthony Scrimtano, was sampled in the Aliens Are Ghosts song from their album with Travis Barker. They took the sample from his review on I Wanna Die in New Orleans, which he gave a strong 6 on, which I disagree, but hey, I mean, this is Melon we're talking about. Transition. Clean versions of songs and albums. Believe it or not, but these do exist, apparently done by some people for money even, but yeah, pretty sure most of them are just the beat playing with the occasional word said here and there. A Man Rose from the Dead. This is Scrim's 20-track solo album, which dropped back in 2020. I feel like looking back at it, this was extremely vital to Scrim's growth as a producer and artist, and most importantly, as a person. The title basically explains it. His sobriety was the best thing to happen to him, and out of it came who he's evolved into today. Say what you will about the project and the experimental route that Scrim took with it, but I think not only did we need this one, but Scrim did most of all. El Güero. As mentioned before, this is one of Scrim's alter egos that originally debuted years ago. Not sure if it was in a song, I had trouble researching, but I found a tweet back in 2019 where this was his Twitter handle. Shout out to the Reddit again. Also, it basically means white boy in Spanish, not the exact spelling, but sounds close enough. Duck Boy. Coming full circle to the Quack ad-lib, which actually wasn't all that random. Yo, what's going on, guys? Future Villains here to update this entry. Duck Boy is now the alias Ruby used for his solo project, Tragic Love Songs to Study 2 Volume 5. At the time of recording, drops tomorrow in a few hours actually. And with that, let's get back to Past Me. I believe this was also his Twitter handle, or it was in his Instagram bio at some point. But as this comment in the sub explains, ducking is when you basically zone in and out of a euphoric state when you're off opioids. And now the ad-lib and bar from Avalon makes a whole lot more sense. I got the blade and the AK with the infrared. This is a line said by Scrim from the song One Girl, Six Blades, One Night of Sin off Great Gods 2, which was sampled for the song If Self-Destruction Was an Olympic Event, I'd Be Tonya Harding on their Long-Term Effects of Suffering album. Sarcophagus series. The Sarcophagus series is 3 songs in which the first one came out in 2015 and 2 of them in 2016. Weirdly enough though, the second one came out in Ramirez's Meet Me Where the River Turns Gray album, and the other 2 came out on the Great Gods tapes. The third Great Gods is highly speculated on, but it has yet to be released. Ugly, Uglier, Ugliest. This is another series of songs that released years ago. The first, which was Ugly, dropped on High Tide in the Snake's Nest, and it samples the iconic Lavender Town from the Pokemon games, which I'm pretty sure has its own iceberg at this point. The video to this song dropped on June 29th in 2015 and has over 12 million views. Also, Ruby's opening line on this song would be sampled later on Pump Fake. Uglier dropped on Eternal Grey in 2016, and it features Dash, who I took this really cool pic with after our first Suicide Boys concert in 2017. And finally, Ugliest didn't drop until their Long-Term Effects of Suffering album, Kill Yourself series. Not to be confused with the sagas, which we'll talk about just after this, but the Kill Yourself series is 4 songs as previously mentioned, the first dropping in 2014, the second in early 2015, the third in late 2015, and the fourth in 2016. Kill Yourself sagas. There are 20 of these, yes, 20, all with varying amounts of songs on them, the first one having been released in July of 2014 and the last released in September 11th, 2017. We'll also go in depth about the covers to each of these, but that'll be later on in the iceberg. Scrim solo works. There's quite a few entries I knew about before making this iceberg, but I knew absolutely nothing about how long Scrim had been making music. As far as I know, his first couple projects dropped all the way back in 2012. His first tape was called Narcotics Anonymous, followed by #Drugflow and #Drugflow2, which dropped in 2013. Patron saint of everything totally included the song Smoke a Sack by, of course, the Suicide Boys, and Nightmare on Rising Sun Street and Full Plates seem to have dropped at the same time. I don't believe there were any videos for any of these except for the now iconic Caesar 1999, which I won't talk about right now because it has its own entry later on in the iceberg. Shark Attack 666 Remix. This is of course the first video uploaded to the Suicide Boys channel all the way back in March 24th of 2014, and it's got over 5 million views as of right now, and it features a young odd enough to snow leopard in the supermarket spitting into his camera while shopping like a calm and reasonable citizen. You should obviously go watch it if you haven't, and make sure you stay to the end, and a pretty cool thing about it is that Ruby edited the video. Clouds' Witnesses streaming services version. A great song that dropped alongside a video in 2015. The video has words that pass along the bottom throughout it until the very end, and on the Spotify and Apple Music versions of Kill Yourself Part 2, Ruby says this exact poem that is also written by him. Execution 1999 music video. Execution 1999 is a solo song by Black Smurf that dropped back in 2015. But what does this have to do with the boys? Aside from making a couple cameos in the video, it was also filmed by them. It's pretty cool, and it almost got 1 million views, so go ahead and go run that up. Sick. So this song dropped back in 2014, and it's one of the few songs that Ruby and Scrim made before they officially titled themselves as the Suicide Boys. But I guess aside from that, the reason for the inclusion of this song is because at the beginning of the song, K Gotti says the N-word, which Ruby talks about in the No Jumper interview. People basically confuse their voices, and obviously that caused a little commotion at the time. As the Bridges Burn. There's definitely a lot more artists and collabs to talk about, but this song right here was originally meant for the boys in Peep, but apparently Omen13 and Craig Zinn got a hold of it, added a verse, and then it was leaked. Then again, the details on that are murky, so I'm not sure of exactly what happened, but basically, the boys in Peep would have had a song very early on in their careers that got ruined by leaks. Once again, y'all, no more leaks. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. This is easily the hardest I've ever worked on a video, but even still, I'm sure I missed things, so whatever I missed, make sure you comment them down below. And as for part 2 of the Iceberg, I really can't tell y'all a release date, but one thing I know for a fact, if this video was the best thing I've ever made on my channel, I'm gonna make sure part 2 is 10 times better than that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed your stay. Farewell.